All right, now this is Great Depression. This is going to be our first question set for the Great Depression. There'll probably be at least one more. All right, number one. Early in the Depression, the Hoover administration established the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to do what? Now, Hoover was 100% dead set against giving, just giving money to the people. Okay, so he didn't go about that. Okay, so if you look at A, we can eliminate A because it's making direct grants to unemployed workers. Okay, B, loan money to banks, insurance companies, and other depressed businesses. Let's hold on to that one. C, purchase American manufactured goods for export to foreign markets. We didn't do that. He didn't do that, so we can eliminate C. D, guarantee a minimum income to all the nation's farmers. Again, this didn't happen. Okay, so we can go back to it's B. Hoover believed that it'd be better off just giving the money to the banks, giving the money to the insurance companies and any big businesses and trying to keep them floating. And if he did that, it would stimulate the economy. All right, number two. Which event most contributed to the establishment of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC? The Panic of 1893. Okay, well, sounds like it could have, so let's hold on to it. B. The formation of the Standard Oil Trust. No, the Standard Oil Trust, was looked at during the Sherman antitrust, with the Sherman antitrust laws, but that's not it. The Teapot Dome scandal, that's corruption and fraud. That's not anything to do with the actual stock market. Okay, um, the 1929 crash of the stock market. Well, being that the SEC was created right after this, stands to reason that that's probably the best answer. D. Number three, to many Californians, the arrival of the Dust Bowl refugees in the mid 1930s represented what? Okay, so these are farmers from the Midwest and from the Great Plains. Their farms are no longer viable. They are out of work. They don't have money. Okay, so all these people are showing up to California. All right, so would this A be a welcome addition to the labor force? Now, this is during the Great Depression. There's not a bunch of extra jobs to go around, so we can eliminate A. B, a source of much needed capital investment. These people don't have capital, so it can't be that. C, new markets for California businesses. Well, that'd be great if you had new customers showing up, but the problem is, again, these people have no money, so it's not that. D, unwanted additions to the ranks of the unemployed. Absolutely. They already had unemployed living in California, and now they had thousands more. Number four, Social Security was a New Deal program designed to do what? Okay, A, to foster the growth of trade unions. Social Security has nothing to do with trade unions. All right. B, to promote recovery through economic development. Not really. Okay, it had nothing to do with economic development. C, give direct aid to American businesses. Social Security doesn't go to businesses. Okay. Or D, provide a minimum retirement income. Okay, and that's what it is, and it's meant to be a supplement. It's not meant to be your only, excuse me, your only retirement income. It is literally just something that's meant to supplement it, boost your income a little bit, so you can actually afford to take care of yourself in retirement. Number five, what New Deal program employed large numbers of artists and writers during the Great Depression? Well, the big thing is there's only one of these that actually goes through and you know realizes that not everybody is meant to dig ditches. Not everybody's meant to work on farms. Not everybody's meant to be a railroad worker or road worker or whatever. And the only one that did that was the Works Progress Administration. It's going to be C. They actually employed writers. They employed artists. They employed people that had a lot of talents, and they figured out that they could put their talents to work in other ways besides manual labor. All right, number six. This chart shows a trend in immigration to the United States between 1920 and 1939. Okay, so from 20 to 29, we have 4.2 million immigrants show up. From 30 to 39, it's only 699,000. Okay, now what most likely causes this trend? Let's don't even look at the answer choices yet. What we've said all along is that people follow jobs. If there are jobs, people will move there. Okay, so let's formulate this opinion that more than likely something's happened and there's no jobs in the U.S. So let's see which one of these you know kind of goes along with that. A, economic depression. Well, if there's economic depression, there's not going to be jobs, so it's probably going to be A. Let's go ahead and see if we can eliminate the rest. So B, education restrictions. That has nothing to do with it. C, expansion to the west. If they were still expanding to the west, that would have created jobs. Therefore, more immigrants would have came. D, increased industrialization. Again, increased industrialization would have meant more jobs, therefore more immigrants. It's going to be A, economic depression. All right, number 7. In 1934, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt created the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) as part of the New Deal. What was the main purpose of the SEC? Okay, is it A, to restrict the manufacture and sale of alcohol? Let me go ahead and just clue you in on this a little bit. Um, Roosevelt was against prohibition. He was against the banning of alcohol. Matter of fact, one of the first things he did after coming into office was he literally, on a radio address on one of his fireside chats, pointed out that he thought most Americans could use a good drink right now. Okay, so it's not going to be that. B, to regulate the stock and bonds market against fraud. Okay, let's hold on to that one. C, to establish tariffs on imported commercial and agricultural goods. What we figured out with tariffs, they work great here for a little while until the other countries start imposing tariffs on our stuff, and then it actually makes things worse. So it can't be C. D, to provide employment for men in the armed forces and border patrol. I don't even know where that one came from. It doesn't even make remotely make sense. It's going to be B. The SEC is all about regulating the stock and bond markets. All right, number 8. The graphic organizer. Okay, up here says provided farmers with inexpensive fertilizer, built dams to reduce flooding and soil erosion, created jobs for unemployed workers, provided cheap electricity to rural areas. Okay, the graphic organizer identifies the effects of a New Deal program from the 1930s. Which New Deal program best completes the graphic organizer? Okay, and this one, it's going to be one of those things where you just have to learn what these programs do. This one's actually going to be A, the Tennessee Valley Authority. Okay, Tennessee Valley Authority built dams. They provided hydroelectricity. They literally reshaped a lot of the land in the whole Tennessee Valley area. Number 9. Why did the people in the Great Depression call their temporary settlement communities Hoovervilles? Let's try to formulate an opinion on this before we ever look at the answers. Okay, who was president when the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began? Hoover. Okay, so let's think about this. Are they calling them Hoovervilles because they respect and love President Hoover? Or are they calling them Hoovervilles because they're blaming President Hoover for the situation they're in? It's going to be that they're blaming President Hoover, and that's going to be B. All right, number 10. How did the Federal Reserve's higher interest rates in the 1930s complicate the Great Depression? When the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, it makes it harder for people to borrow money. And if it's harder for people to borrow money, it's harder for people to spend money. And if it's harder for people to spend money, that slows our economy down. So high interest rates usually means a stagnating economy. Okay. Besides that, not only are people not borrowing money and spending money, but people that have money aren't spending money either because the interest rates are so high. If they put their money in banks or bonds or whatever, they'll make a good amount of money off that. So they're not going to spend their money, they're going to save it. And that's going to be C. People save money rather than spending it. All right, number 11. Which constitutional check did the Supreme Court use when declaring several New Deal programs unconstitutional? Okay, now, which one of these is an actual check that the Supreme Court can use? Okay, judicial review. Yes, they can use that one. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the answer is A, but let's look at the rest of them anyway. Executive privilege. First of all, executive privilege has to do with the president, so we can eliminate that one. C, popular sovereignty. In other words, the whole concept that the people vote on everything. Well, that's not popular sovereignty, so it's not that. D, indirect democracy. Indirect democracy means you vote for an elected representative to look after your well-being. In this case, that would be members of Congress usually. Again, it has nothing to do with the Supreme Court. It's going to be A, judicial review. Number 12. All right, this photograph was taken in 1944. Which conclusion can be drawn from the photograph? All right, now the photograph up here shows a guy sitting out front of a building, and on the sign it says transient social services, meals and lodging. So they're going to give you food and a place to stay, and it's got the logo for the Salvation Army on the front. Which conclusion can be drawn from this photograph? A. Religious organizations provided assistance to the poor. That makes sense. Let's hold on to that one. B. Government facilities helped homeless during the New Deal. Well, this isn't a government facility. This is a religious facility. C. Interstate travel increased the demand for roadside motels. This isn't a motel. This is, a shelter. D. Military recruiters opened offices to attract able-bodied men during World War. That should be World War II. I don't know why it says World War in. No, that's not what it is. Okay, it's religious organizations stepped in to try to help poor people out, and they still do that. Number 13. All right, this photograph was taken in 1935. As a result of events like this, what occurred that altered the landscape of the United States? Okay, this is a dust storm during the whole Dust Bowl era in the middle of the Great Depression, which made things, you know, horrible. Um, these dust clouds were formed when high winds swept across the plains that had been dried out by drought, and this land had been over farmed, so it was just loose dust on top instead of moist soil. And when this happened, it created these huge dust storms that basically rendered the land useless for a time. Okay, so the big thing that happened with this is, and the only thing, this deals with farmland. So there's only one of these, maybe two. You have people constructed dams to irrigate the land. That'd be nice, but there was no water at the time, and it was that's more of a slow effect. Or B, people abandoned farms and moved westward. That's what it was. People lost their farms, they lost everything. They packed up what they could and they left. It's gonna be B. All right, 14. The list below includes selected New Deal programs: Social Security Act, the Works Progress Administration, Civilian Conservation Corps. What did these programs have in common? All right, so what we know about all these is they worked specifically with individual people. They didn't work with organizations. They didn't work with businesses. Okay, Social Security Act helped the elderly. Works Progress Administration and Civilian Conservation Corps put people that were out of work back to work. Okay, so specifically, it's going to be A. They targeted individuals affected by the economic depression. Number 15. How did Herbert Hoover try to deal with the Great Depression? Again, we said that Herbert Hoover did not want to give any kind of money directly to the people. Instead, he sought to loan it to who? Well, in this case, he gave loans to large businesses. A. Number 16. The economic depression of the 1930s was ended by what? Now, a lot of people make the misconception that the Great Depression was ended by the New Deal. And the New Deal did a lot to alleviate some of the effects of the Great Depression. It didn't end the Great Depression, though. We can say what we want. FDR was great. FDR came up with all these programs and helped people out, and he did help people out in a lot of ways. But what ultimately ended the Great Depression for us was World War II. Even before we became involved in World War II, we were providing supplies specifically to Britain and to well, not to the Germans, but to the Russians and to the French. All right. Then after we get involved, not only are we still providing supplies to them, but now every factory we have in the country is going wide open 24 hours a day, producing something for the war effort. Okay. And this puts people back to work. Matter of fact, it puts so many people back to work that we wind up importing migrant workers to help fill the void when we need more work or we need more labor. Okay, so it's going to be A. All right, number 17. Which Roman numeral on the map above correctly shows the location of the 1930s Dust Bowl? All right, remember the Dust Bowl happened on the Great Plains. Okay, it happened in an area where it was wide open and flat, and um, you know the American Serengeti, as it's often called. Okay, well, if you look at Roman numeral 4, that's Georgia. That's the southeast. That's not the Great Plains. You look at Roman numeral 3, and that's the Midwest. Okay, Midwest didn't suffer through the same thing. Matter of fact, in the area that they're showing in Roman numeral 3 is actually more of an industrial base. Roman numeral 1, that's the up in the northwest, and that's in Idaho right there. That's probably in the Rocky Mountains. So that's not um, really the Dust Bowl. It's going to be Roman numeral 2. Places like Oklahoma, Nebraska, North Texas, All right, these are the places that struggled with the Dust Bowl. And number 18, which evidence showed that the prosperity of the 1920s was an illusion? Okay. A, prices on consumer goods decreased. Well, not really. B, overseas investments declined. That could just be a trend. C, the economic gap between workers and managers decreased. No, quite the opposite. A lot of times it increased. Or D, many people increased their debt. Think about it. Yeah, people have lots of nice things. But if they're going into debt to get these nice things, how good is our economy? I mean, you take somebody, all right, you see it all the time with professional athletes. They might be making $5 million a year, but if they're so far in debt that they can't save anything, or all their money's already accounted for and they're making payments on everything, their net worth really isn't that high. Okay? So it's going to be D. Many people increase their debt.